most of your writing should be done so you could focus on editing and revising next week. So today, again, you're going to watch the lesson on how to end your story. And then you're going to go into your breakout rooms. We talked yesterday about making sure that you had made a Google Doc. And even if you've been writing your story by hand, you're going to want to make sure that you get it typed. I don't really care if you type it or your parents type it, as long as it has your punctuation in it. And you can also use voice typing, which I taught you how to do yesterday. You can see that in my video that I posted yesterday for writing, which is in your homeroom in your resources. So today we're going to be watching the video on how to finish your story, going to the breakout rooms, and then I'm going to be conferring with you in the breakout rooms and asking you, what are you working on today as a writer? Are you working on the start of your story and a great hook? Are you working on rising tension or slowing down the action so you can write every detail, SAID, setting, action, inner thought, and dialogue, so people can see it like a movie when they read it? Think about what you're working on today as a writer, and we'll go to breakout rooms and write today. And then at 1:30, I'm going to ask a couple of people to come back into Zoom and work with me and Ms. Janney, who will be here at 1:30, just because that's the time that I have her on your writing today. Okay, any questions before I share my screen? Okay, here we go. Let's watch today's lesson on how to write a strong ending. And this is in the narrative lessons, and it's week 2, finishing your story, lesson 6. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen and make it full screen, hopefully. There we go.
And then grab your pencil and your notebook. And you are going to start to write down the things that I have on this chart. I'd like you to open your notebook up. And I'm grabbing my notebook.
So everybody should be grabbing a notebook right now.
That says,
I'm watching. Guys need to be grabbing a notebook.
But how to end a story. So here's the thing. If you were learning to cook.
So I want to see everybody grabbing some. If you don't have a writer's notebook, if you're doing it online, then go to part of your writing section, and you're going to have to make something like notes on writing, or you could use your language arts notebook, and you could open it up to the inside cover and start taking notes on how to end a story. But everybody needs to be writing these notes down somewhere. Here we go.
You wouldn't just make up the dinners. You'd look in a cookbook from an expert, wouldn't you? And if you were learning to play the piano, you probably wouldn't like sit at a piano and just teach yourself. You'd probably have a piano teacher and learn how to play the piano. And that's Ryan, please mute, honey, right now. It's my turn. That's true of writing as well. There are a lot of people who know a lot of things about writing, and they're experts, and we're going to learn from them. So I could have made you guys study a lot of books and study the way writers end stories, but I've looked into that already, and I've collected some tips on some really great ways to end your story. So please grab a notebook. Please write this title. I'm going to take off my Viking hat. To end a story well. And write that in your notebook. To end a story well. And then make a line under it and put number 1. So right now you're all writing in your notebook. So Rad, I don't see you writing. I see Tomomi is. Good job, Rad. Get your notebook out. Taking notes. Yavard, good job. To end a story well. Hopefully you can read my sloppy handwriting. Good job, Joey. Where's Tyler? You grabbing a pen? Okay, everybody is taking notes right now. How to end your story. To end a story well. Our very first tip is to leave a lasting image. So that story that we just read, I bet that you have some images in your brain from that story that you're going to remember. In our story 11 that I read you the other day, I don't know how many of you remember the very end and that image of that tiny red balloon floating away. You remember she said, I hope today is far, far away, like a tiny, tiny red balloon floating away in the sky. So far you can't even see it because she wanted the day to be gone. When you leave your readers with a lasting image like that, it helps them remember the story in a nice way. In Stone Fox, which many of you read last year, at the very end, how many of you raise your hand if you remember little Willie picking up Searchlight the dog after the dog died at the end of the race and carrying him over that finish line. Raise your hand if you remember that lasting image from
Did you guys read Stone Fox
that
last year?
story.
Yeah.
I didn't like the ending.
It's sad, but you do remember that image. It's sort of, it's burned into your brain. So that's one way to end your story. So in my story, I could end with a lasting image of when I turned and looked down the hall at my brother who was looking at the door that he'd broken after he chased me down the hall. And I could end by writing about that image of looking back at my brother. I felt a little bit bad for how much trouble he was in. He was always in trouble like this. And looking back, I felt kind of sad for him. I could do that. The book Fireflies that I read you the other day has a lasting image. How many of you remember that lasting image of the boy sitting in the window and he's watching his fireflies fly away into the night and it's mixing with his tears? Do you remember that beautiful lasting image? So writing in a way that you leave your reader with some sort of beautiful last image is kind of a cool way to end a story. So you're writing number one, you're writing leave a lasting
You guys should be writing this right now. Write it down.
image or picture.
Leave a
An image is
lasting
picture.
image.
So it's like you're painting a little picture at the end of your story with your words. Leave a lasting image or picture. Leave a lasting image or picture. Sorry, my handwriting is a little sloppy on this thing. It's hard to write on paper. Whiteboards are easier. I should have just gone over to the whiteboard in the front of the classroom, except there's no classroom there. It's just a wall.
That's my old classroom.
Okay. The second way that is a really good way to end a story is to repeat something from the beginning. So number two,
You guys should all be writing
repeat.
this.
Something from the start. Do you remember how 11 started out with, today I am 11. I am 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And then in the very last part of the book, she did it again. She said, today I am 11. I am 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And she repeated it.
I need to read you that
In
story.
my story, if I started it with a hint at the trouble to come, like I could have said, I couldn't have guessed that today would be a day that would change my life forever. As a big hint at the start, I could do the same hint at the end. Looking back, there's no way I could have guessed that today would have been a day that changed my life forever. And you just repeat the exact line that you did at the start of your story. And if you're thinking, well, I didn't start my story in a way that's easy to repeat, then you can always go back and add something to your hook that's like something you could repeat at the end. That's a great writer's tip. Okay, the next way that's really a great way to finish your story is with a flashback memory. So flashback memory right here. 3, a flashback memory. These aren't the only ways to end stories, but these are strong ways to end stories. Please don't end your story with, well, that's all I have to say, the end. That is not a good way to end your story. All right, so a flashback memory works like this. You say something like, I will always remember that last time I saw my grandmother, or I will always remember the day my sister got hurt and it scared me. Or looking back at my life, I think that was a day that was one of the scariest days of my life, or one of the days I learned the most. But you do some sort of flashback. I'll always remember, or looking back. I'm going to be looking to your stories to see which one of these you choose to finish it with. The fourth way that we have to end a story today is with what you learned, the lesson that you learned. And I know you can't quite see that one. Let's see. Ah, there we go. So you can end your story with a lesson that you learned, or the moral of the story, sort of. So let's say your story was about, I don't know, bike riding and getting kind of crazy or trying to do a jump and then crashing. You might say, that was the day I learned to think before I jump. Or you might say, even though I would have, so in my story, it was about fighting with my brother. And my lesson I said is, even though I would have many more fights with my brother, that was the day I learned he was human too. So this is a good place to bring home your message and make it strong. Maybe if your story, like your Rard story, is about meeting his little baby brother for the first time. So you might say that was the first day I realized I was no longer alone in the world. I would always have my brother. That's a lovely way to end your story. So what we normally do in class now is I push you guys to try out these different ways of ending your story. So in other words, with my story about my brother, I might start out by ending it with a lasting image of looking down the hall. And then the next time I'm going to sit and I'm going to write the ending again. And this time I'm going to repeat something from the start. So I might say, you never know what each day will bring. And then I'll put that at the end too. You never know what each day will bring. Or then I would sit down and I would try it again with a flashback memory. I'll always remember that crazy day when my brother broke the door. Something like that, right? So I invite you today, your job today is to try to finish your story and try to work on a really strong ending. You want your ending to really make sure that your story has said what you wanted it to say. Do I have any questions about this? The ending or the story? And remember, when I say we're ending our story, we're not really done with it, because you're not done unless you're a turkey, right, on Thanksgiving. So writers can always add to their stories. So even though you feel like you might be done with it, a really great writer is always willing to look at it again with fresh eyes and change their story. This week we're writing. Next week we're going to take the story and we're going to do what's called revising and editing. We're going to share our stories. We're going to read them with partners next week. So when you come to school on Monday, you need to have your story done and hopefully typed. I don't really care if you type it yourself, although I'd like you to type it yourself, because I'm kind of looking at your spelling and punctuation and how you use the typing tools. If you don't like to type with your fingers, you can do voice typing. If you want me to show you how to do that, you can come back during question time and I can show you how to voice type. Go ahead, question. Go ahead.
Wait, we have to type our story in like the computer,
Yep.
like at Google Slides.
On Google Docs, yeah, that would be great. I would like you to do that, because next week I want you to revise it, and it's a lot easier to revise online. If you want your parents to type it for you, and if they're willing to, they can do that. The only problem then is it's not really your spelling and punctuation. Okay? Yeah.
I'm doing it on Google Slides. Does that work?
Oh, go ahead, Clara.
I'm doing it on Google Slides. Does that work?
Yeah, I guess it would be better on Google Docs, but you could copy it and paste it onto a Google Doc.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Alma, go ahead.
There is like you can just correct all the words and stuff on the Google Doc, so it's just like,
yeah, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that next week. That's so smart that you know that. Awesome. Alex, go ahead.
So the way me and my mom do it is, first we type it down, and then we don't revise it just by the computer, because it's hard to find mistakes on the computer. So we print it out and then look for mistakes there.
Well, that's a good plan. Thank you.
Find a mistake on paper.
That sounds like a great strategy. Okay, so at this point, we're going to move on to the last part of today's class, which is the kids who are doing the regular Florida Virtual.
Okay, wait. So we are done with that. So friends, today and every day when you end a story, I want it to be the strongest part of the story. It's kind of your last chance to say to your reader, hey, it was important that you read my story because this story might help you with your life, right? So you want to take and try to finish it in one of these ways. We're going to go to breakout rooms now, and you need to work on your story. Please turn on your screen so that I can come in and ask you what you're working on, and try to get all of the writing done today. Evie, question. Oops.
My dog is so loud. Oh my god. Okay, but can we do partners?
Are you done with your story?
Almost.
So here's the thing. Next week, we're going to be doing a lot of partner work to revise and stuff. So for today, I'd rather have you working alone in a room unless you're completely done. And then if you are, you may ask about a partner, but I'd have to have 2 people who are ready. I'd rather you worked on finishing your story today.
Okay.
Partners next week, okay? All right. I'm going to open the rooms. Halame, stay with me here in the main room, please. And guys, not too many questions right away because I'll be doing a reading thing with them. And so if you have questions, hold on to them and I'll come around to your room after I'm done. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me see who I have here because I want to see if there's somebody else who needs to do their reading assessment with me. I don't think so. I think you guys have all done it. Great. So I'll be coming into your room to check on your writing. Keep writing, my friends. Okay. Halame, stay with me. Everybody else, you can go to your rooms. Hopefully.